happy little lot adjustment. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Public Works Finance Committee meeting for May 13th, 2019. The first item of business on our agenda is approval of the minutes from the April 22nd meeting. Anybody see any problems with those?
Look
Nope,
good to
they
me.
look good.
Think we can approve those? You with us there, Mr. Reedner?
I am.
Okay, cool.
Thank you. Just looking at my agenda.
Yeah, well, just, just looking for an acknowledgement there, Now, item number 2 is the disbursement report for April 2019. Sarah Banks is going to tell us how much money we spent and where we spent it.
Yep, good afternoon. Looking at major expenditures for month end, April 30, 2019, they totaled $2,120,461. Our largest expenditure, as usual, is payroll at $1,030,131. Everything else was pretty calm. For April, our largest expenditure was to iCrimp, and that was for our annual membership contribution payment, and that was actually the second payment, and it was totaled of $128,418.50. Everything else was pretty routine.
Seems pretty bland.
Yeah.
No. Okay.
It looked routine to me, too.
I didn't see any extra zeros. Yeah. So I guess we can pass around the
All right.
sheet to approve that.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 3 on today's agenda is a public meeting. It's a proposed lot division at 1110 South Main Street. Leah Carlson's going to tell us about that. Good afternoon, Leah.
You created a chasm art. It was the vigor with which I spun the chair.
It's more of a Bergstrand.
Non-displaced fold.
All right, so for your review today, we have a public meeting for proposed lot division at 1110 South Main Street. The applicant is proposing to create one new 5,000 square foot parcel from the existing 64,800 square foot parcel. The parcel is at the corner of Main Street and Henley Street. And as I said, the existing lot is 64,800 square feet currently. The proposal is to split off this house in the far right corner. It's 5,000 square foot lot, and there is an existing house on the subject property. And so with this, it would leave a remainder lot of 59,800 square feet. Both parcels are within the R4 zoning district. And within the R4 zoning district, a minimum square foot of 5,000 square feet is required, and a minimum lot width of 50 feet is required. This is the site plan showing that the proposed lot meets both of these criteria. It's exactly 50 feet wide, and it is 5,000 square feet exactly. As I mentioned, there is one existing house on the lot. It does meet the side and rear setbacks required here. The required side setbacks are a minimum of 5 feet with a combined total of 15 feet on either side. So staff recommends approval of the proposed lot division located at 1110 South Main Street with no conditions. Per city policy, residents within 600 feet of the subject property have been notified and may be present to testify.
Okay.
So any questions?
Seems pretty straightforward. I guess at this time I would invite anybody that wants to make a public comment to come up to the table and state your name and address and tell us what your thoughts are on this. Nobody seems willing to do that, so I guess we can discuss it amongst ourselves. It seems pretty straightforward. It's within the code, and
There's not a lot to say about it. It meets all the applicable requirements, and I don't see any problem with it.
none of the neighbors have complained or showed up to oppose it, so I guess we would recommend that it moves forward to council. Probably could be a consent agenda item.
Great. Thanks, sir.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Leah.
Leah.
Thank you.
Item number 4 on today's agenda is the Lola Clyde Park playground slab and pathway bid results. David Schott's going to tell us how much that's going to cost. Afternoon, sir.
Well, thank you, and good afternoon. Once again, this is the Lola Clyde Park Playground Slab and Pathway bid results. So we're requesting authorization to move forward with McCall's Classic Construction in the amount of $64,154, a 10% construction contingency of $6,416, an additional $1,000 for material testings for a total amount not to exceed $71,570. This project consists of installing 567 square yards of concrete slab. So this is the slab of concrete that would go underneath the safety tiles. And then 98 square yards of concrete sidewalk to get to the playground. So in this picture, this is the bridge at Lola Clyde Park, pathway up to the new playgrounds, which incidentally were delivered today. So. This is the construction plan for it, as I noted. New path would come off the bridge into our concrete pad here, and rubber tiles and playgrounds would get installed on top of that in-house with our parks crew. We issued a solicitation of bids on April 24th. We had 2 responsive bid proposals, one for the $64,154 from McCall's Classic Construction. The other one was from Knox Concrete in the amount of $94,000 and some change. Our engineer's estimate with our city engineering department was $77,800. The funding source is the Hamilton Fund and was approved in the fiscal year 19 budget. This will be under capital projects in our capital project code. So with that, we're recommending council authorization to accept the low bid from McCall's Classic Construction in the amount of $64,154, 10% construction contingency, and the $1,000 for materials testing for $71,570. With that, I'd happy to answer any questions from committee.
Seems pretty straightforward to me. David, the question I have is maybe not totally related to it, but where the bridge is, did the flood damage the underlayment of that bridge, the embellishments of that bridge at all?
No, the only damage we had on the park was the new Lola Clyde Park sign. All the mulch and bark got washed out from that, but the sign survived and did just fine. But damage on that park was limited just to that area.
Thank you.
Back to the site diagram with showing the path coming in, that one. What's the dark road-looking thing to the south?
Those are construction entrance road protections, so it's some rock and gravel, so we're not
So you can get the
taking part of the
concrete in
park.
there without sinking?
Yeah, and well, that and we don't want tires with dirt and stuff heading down the roads and stuff. It's more to protect.
So does that kind of stay-ish afterwards, or?
The way I've got it written is it'll be removed. Yep. So after construction, it's just a construction entrance.
And one other pesky question, what's the nature of the materials testing? What are we testing for?
That's just concrete. You're looking for strength of the, I don't know all the details in the testing, but you want to make sure it's good concrete going in.
It's in the specifications, it has to meet certain parameters, so they'll test it to make sure that it meets those parameters.
Cool. Just an interesting, say what?
Sure.
But yeah,
It's after it's cured, they test it for tensile strength or whatever.
I think it's compression, yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Thank you. I think this is another consent agenda item.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Oh, you're up again, next. We've got also the Lena Whitmore Park ADA pathway bid results.
Well, thank you. This is the Lena Whitmore Park ADA pathway bid results. It's really similar to Lola. So we're requesting authorization to retain McCall's Classic Construction in the amount of $48,875.75. again with a 10% construction contingency and an additional $1,000 for materials testing. This project consists of the removal of the existing sidewalk and installation of a new concrete sidewalk, along with a pedestrian ramp. One of the challenges in this park is this is our parking lot to access into the park. There's no pedestrian ADA ramp, so that's how this project really started, was providing an ADA access into the park. Incidentally, I think this is Land and Water Conservation Fund, which I saw in some of their notes that they want ADA access to that shelter. So, and I was cleaning out my office, of all things. So this is the site plan, just spring cleaning. So with the pedestrian ramp, this section of sidewalk all the way up to the city playground will be constructed with new concrete. This parallels Lola. City issued a solicitation of bids on April 24th, 2019. We received 2 bid proposals, one from McCall's at $48,875, 75 cents, and then the other one was from Knox Concrete at $67,895. Our engineering estimate was $56,698. The budget for this project was $78,487, so we're well within budget.
It's an unprecedented 2 underbid things in a row.
But gratifying.
Yeah.
I almost did a backflip. The funding is capital projects, parks improvements, and a capital line item here. And so we're recommending moving forward with McCall's Classic Construction in the amount of $48,875.75 with a 10% construction contingency and $1,000 for materials testing for a total not to exceed $56,698.
Okay.
With that, I'd be
Anybody
happy to
have
take any questions.
Comments?
No-brainer.
I think it's, let's proceed. Consent
Yes,
agenda.
please.
Thank you. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. Item number 6 on today's Public Works agenda is Moscow City Sidewalk Replacement Project for fiscal year 2019. Bid results and a contract award. Scott Bontrager's going to tell us about that, so people can sign up to get their sidewalk replaced at the lowest possible cost.
Yeah, good afternoon. So we've been doing this sidewalk program, assistance program, since 2012. And with this program, over the years, we've done roughly 10,000 feet of concrete with both city-type projects and helping the citizens with doing their sidewalk. And we've also done over 100 pedestrian ramps. We typically see about 20 residents participate each year, and we usually have about another 10 small city projects we end up doing under this program. But just as a reminder, kind of what this program is, online, there's a copy of the brochure that's available to the residents, kind of talking about it, but I thought I'd just read a little bit from it. So the goal of it was, a functional sidewalk network links neighborhoods, adds value to homes, and serves to encourage the most basic form of transportation. The objective of the city Moscow sidewalk system is to improve and maintain accessible pedestrian routes for all members of our community. And in an effort to assist the property owners to maintain their important part of the infrastructure, the city of Moscow has created a property owner assistance program, which will provide a simple process for owners to have their walks evaluated and repaired. So with this program, as opposed to just property owners individually going out to contractors and soliciting them for work, we put together more of a comprehensive program to help drive the prices a little bit lower. And the city itself goes out, evaluates the sidewalks, determines the cost for residents. We coordinate with the contractor, we waive permit fees, we provide the traffic control that normally a resident might have to pay for with their cost to the contractor. We inspect the installation, and then we also provide a 2-year warranty on the work. So this year, we put out solicitations for the program to 3 local concrete contractors, and we received 2 bids back. One from McCall's Classic Construction at $43,288, and one from Knox Concrete at $89,750. The engineer's estimate on this was $60,390, and this is based upon values that we were putting together to estimate a rough value. It's more of trying to get an evaluation of a bid tabulation per item, so that if a resident wants to just replace a certain amount of sidewalk or driveway, that it has a table of values for that associated item. But of the bids that we had received, McCall's Classic Construction of Clarkston was the low bid at $43,288. And they've done this program in the past numerous times, have done very quality work for the residents in the past. So the city recommends accepting the responsive low bid from McCall's Classic Construction to authorize a work order-based contract with McCall's Classic Construction based upon the prices that they had submitted in their bid.
I'm very excited to see a contractor for this program because I know we haven't had one in a couple years. So we have a wait list currently, correct? Do you think everyone who's on that wait list will be able to participate this year?
We should be able to.
Yeah.
We're going to start contacts as soon as we're able to award this, to reach out to everybody, reevaluate, give them updated pricing and everything. We've stayed in contact with quite a few of them, and we've also had a few more come in recently too, so.
Great. Do you know how long that wait list is?
Not right now. I think over the past couple of years, it's around 10, 15 people, I believe, but I have to go back and check.
I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, be good to get that caught up. Yeah.
And get more people back on the list, too.
Yeah.
I think it's a great program.
I think we're still at about 50-something miles of missing sidewalk in the city, so anything we can do to maintain what's already there is good and add to it.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much, Scott. I
Yes.
think we could recommend that this be approved on the consent agenda as well.
Yep.
Item number 7 is the pedestrian curb ramp improvement project for fiscal year 2019, and bid results and contract award for that. Scott's going to give us the details on that as well.
Yeah, this again is another program. We've been doing this since 2013. It's essentially grant money that's given to us by ITD to fix pedestrian ramps within the ITD right-of-way, or the highway right-of-way, for all their different deficient ramps that they have. We've done roughly 40 ramps using their money since 2013. This would be adding another one. This is a continuation of fixing the ramp that's there on the southeast corner of 3rd and Jackson. Last year, we had done all the sidewalk and frontage improvements in front of the Turnstone building there. And this will be finishing off the corner, essentially, for the pedestrian ramp. This is a ramp also that ITD was on the hook for doing when they came through and did their paving project 2 years ago. So this is their participation in fixing that particular ramp. So with this program this time around, City Council had approved a cooperative agreement in December with ITD reimbursing up to $32,000 for this one ramp, or for this location. We put together a package for it. The engineer's estimate on it was $25,618. It was approved by ITD to move forward with the design, or for construction on it. We put it out to 3 local contractors. We received the one responsive bid back from McCall's Classic Construction, and their bid came in at $21,294. So we recommend acceptance of McCall's Classic Construction's low bid of $21,924, with a contingency not to exceed 10% of the contract, or $2,192.40.
This is one that bulbs it out a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which makes a lot of sense, because I wouldn't want to try to navigate a wheelchair around the pole that's there otherwise.
Yeah, and the elevations of the location, that's, one of the only ways we can do to make that compliant. Very similar to the bulb outs that we had done on Washington Street on those various locations.
And I think it's a great idea, and certainly helps pedestrians in that area, especially with farmers market and all the other things that go on. It's one of those little intersections that presents quite the impediment, really.
Yeah.
Glad we're dealing with it. So I'm very much in favor.
Very much in favor of it as well. I think it's great that we've got a single contractor that's only has to, one mobilization to get all these things done. Is probably saving us a lot of money, so I think that's.
Yeah, McCall's has been very interested in doing a lot of work for us up here this year, and has been very aggressive in bidding all of our projects.
They've done good work in the past year. Didn't they do the bike shelter here and the
Yeah.
big bump up at the high school?
They've done a lot of work for us in the past decade, and they always do really good work.
Yeah, I'm impressed with the quality of the workmanship on the sidewalks and bus shelters and everything, so, great. I think,
And they don't waste time either.
yeah, they get right on it.
Thanks.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, guess we came away with basically nothing for the regular agenda on that, no?
We are doing good.
Mr. Palmer's here this afternoon to tell us about the arrival of the Third Street Bridge and
Everyone bowling,
bicycle
Lola,
lane.
Betke, happy to be here. I'll be heartbroken when I no longer get to give these updates, and it appears that we're coming toward the end of them. We are on schedule. We're on schedule for an installation of the bridge itself, the bridge structure, this Thursday, the 18th. We anticipate the bridge should arrive sometime around 8 a.m. It's being driven over from Missoula, Montana. So 8 a.m. is when they're scheduled to be here. We'll have a crane out there at 7 a.m. getting set up and being prepared, and then we will be plucking her right off the truck and putting her directly in place. We are going to be setting up that morning. We'll have, for safety reasons, we'll have a work zone, so it'll be closed off here at the curb returns on each side. And when we've got a big crane out there, cables, there's a lot of potential for things to happen that we don't want people getting too close. And so because we know there'll be interest in this, we will have an observation area set up over here. So we plan to have just a little table out there. If we get really generous, maybe some donuts or something, and a place where people can actually watch this bridge get set in place. There's a lot of community interest in this. And so we'll be setting that up for this project. And from there, there's the connection work that'll happen. So we set the bridge in place, and then the abutments, the seals get filled with concrete. We pour the bridge deck, and then we do the connecting work, which is the ramps that ramp it back up into the sidewalk on the sides, tie it in on each end. We actually have a bid opening for that portion of the project today. And so I don't have the results yet, but they opened at 3 o'clock. So we'll have the results from that, a pretty quick little project, get that tied in, and then we'll be scheduling a ribbon cutting for this one. So I don't know if you have any questions about that, but happy to try and answer anything I can on the bridge itself.
What do you anticipate for the time frame for the pouring of the concrete on the deck and the tie-ins and the curing of the concrete before we could actually open it?
There was a deadline that was placed in that for that work, and I believe that deadline was mid-June. I think was the deadline to have everything done, poured in, and opened. But I can verify that and let the council know.
I'd just be interested in when
Yeah,
you get questions about when is it going to be open.
Right.
So 8 o'clock's the viewing time.
yeah. To see the crane actually picking it up, I think the best window of time will be sometime between about 8:30 and 10 o'clock is probably when it'll be hoisted and set in place.
I want to see it.
You want to see it in the air. Yeah. Good photo op there.
We've got Zach will be coming out with our information systems department. We'll make sure we get some good footage of this, and so that we can put together some stuff for those who can't make it and post it to the city's social media accounts.
Excellent.
All right.
All right, the next report is on the separated bike lane and termination down here on Washington Street, we're hoping.
This was sent out to you by email about a month ago.
Yeah, I've never seen that. From the Transportation Department.
This is from Transportation Commission.
Yeah.
Michael Kite, he's with us today.
All right, so separated bike lane. This is one that, as you know, has been in the works for a little while, associated with the corridor on 3rd Street. It initiated as a project that was looking at traffic calming for that corridor when a multimodal bridge was being contemplated for the intersection that we just spoke about, I guess, for the creek crossing that we just spoke of. It was determined by council they wanted to continue to move forward with the separated bike lanes. And so that is something that we have been working toward. This was, the separated bike lane was the second phase of a 2-phase project. The first phase did a lot of the things like the flashing lights that we have out in front of the high school now, the crossing, several of the bulb outs. And the second phase includes additional infrastructure improvements, concrete islands, some additional ramps to further accommodate multimodal use of that corridor, and then obviously the big most visible infrastructure improvement would be the separated bike lane on that facility. The funding for that project was almost entirely expended with phase 1 of that project, and so we don't currently have allotted funding for phase 2. Our cost estimates for that phase, which includes all of the improvements that I spoke of and the separated bike lane, fall between about $270,000 and $350,000. The difference being largely being driven by the mechanism that we use for the separation for the separated bike lane itself. There are several options out there, and as separated bike lanes have really become very prevalent throughout the country, and a lot of research is showing the importance of separation for ridership. As will happen, there's more of a demand now for separated bike lanes, so we're starting to see a lot more products filling the void, whereas before you kind of ended up with scabbing something together with things that we have, existing things. And so you can see here, this is the lower end of the cost estimate is a setup kind of like this, where you have a parking bumper, as we've all seen in parking lots, and then just a kind of a glue down vertical bollard system. These are just some examples of what those look like. Another large portion of the expenses we're looking at these that I will point out is the markings here. It's always something when we're in winter weather conditions. You know, we always look enviously at places that don't have to deal with snow. Pavement markings just don't last as long for us as they do in places that don't deal with snow. And this will be a narrow corridor, and so there will be traffic very close to and on top of the paint at times, snow plows most certainly. And so we really have to consider that. And so what we've got called out in our plan is for thermoplastic to be installed rather than just paint. The paint just doesn't last. And in this setting, it's really difficult for us to just get out and restripe that because of the vertical element. It's not something that we can just, zip the truck down each side, and then, there's a lot of handwork doing the cross hatches in between. And so our payoff on something like this for thermoplastic, it's more expensive up front, but our payoff generally is at about 2.5 years. And in this kind of application, the thermoplastic will last us 5 to 7 years. And so it pays for itself generally 2.5 times over. So it's worth doing, but the upfront cost is a little bit more. So those are just some examples of that style of use. This is an example of another system that we have looked at. This is a kind of more of a prefabricated system. These systems bolt down, they go in pretty quick, they're purpose-built. And so they have the rails and the bollards and just provide a really nice clean delineation. They are a little bit more expensive. One of the nice things is it gives you a lot of aspects that you can add on to these to really dress it up and make it feel like a very intentional corridor. So, things like planter boxes. The nice thing about these is at the intersections, they have foot plates here where a rider can just set a foot down rather than having to dismount or get off. And with the narrow nature of some of our bike lanes in spots, that can be pretty attractive because you don't have somebody kind of wobbling on a bike. They can just ride up and set a foot down. And this arm rail right here, you can rest your arm on top of those. So there's an example of how those are used. And these are things that we could deploy strategically at key intersections, places where we want to just up the visibility and just dress it up a little bit, make it look a little bit nicer. So there's an example of what that might look like. We've considered if the council were to decide they want to go this route, we would likely do some sort of hardscape in here, some sort of rock, maybe even some artwork or something that's easy to maintain, so we're not necessarily having to have somebody run around trying to water these things and keep something growing in there, but that's something that we could certainly look at. This is just another design, just to give an example of some of the newer things that we're starting to see pop up that just weren't even available a year or two ago, that we're starting to see become available. So those are the options for the bike lane. I think Gary wanted to talk a little bit about how we might look at funding.
And we've got a couple of things today. One is we wanted to talk about the letter that you have in front of you today regarding the Transportation Commission's proposal to terminate the separated bike lanes at the intersection of Washington and 3rd, and talk about some perspectives on that and maybe some things that, ways to approach that. Tyler's exactly right. The funding, when Les had put together the original estimate for the Third Street multimodal corridor, if you will, separated bike lanes was something that generally was going to put together with candles and paint and that sort of thing. Council wanted a more robust response to that, but yet after the bids came in on the Third Street multimodal bridge, and council then made the decision to proceed with the bicycle pedestrian bridge, then no other funds were designated at that time. We utilized funding from the original accumulation to purchase the bicycle pedestrian bridge, but didn't make any, determination of how the separated bike lanes, number one, were going to be built, what was going to be used, and two, how we were going to pay for those. Fortunately, and as Tyler indicated, the estimates that we have now range, if you want something similar to what you saw up here, the range is anywhere from $270,000 to $351,000, depending on what you want to see there. Gives some protection with due consideration to the fact that it is a heavily used road. It goes through a very historic part of the city. So we felt as staff that you'd likely want to have something there that was up to the task, if you will, also connecting two school zones. So the recommendation at this point, and we can certainly flesh this out even more, the recommendation was to proceed with the modular rail system, the most expensive, $351,000. We do have an accumulation in the multimodal bridge line item of $446,000 remaining. So we could utilize that accumulation to go ahead and pay for the previously unbudgeted separated bike lanes. So what we're looking for today is to update you as to the situation as we see it, get some direction, and then we will go back, flesh it out more, and bring that back to you with a full-fledged recommendation, funding memo, and all that sort of thing. But the choice that needs to be made is whether you want to keep that accumulation in for the multimodal bridge, or do you want to utilize it for the separated bike lanes? When the council made the decision to proceed, separated bike lane was something that factored into the council's decision, and in fact, it's published decision. So we just wanted to get some direction on that. Otherwise, we're going to have to try and budget for, and it'll take a couple of years to accumulate that funding. Meanwhile, the bicycle pedestrian bridge will be used. The most we can do is likely then is put paint down and perhaps a candle or two.
What we'd end up doing in that situation. So a couple things I want to point out is even if the council were to decide to use those funds toward the separated bike lane, we would move as quickly as possible to get design and get bids out. We're still likely, one of the things that we really want to avoid with this is installation mid-school year. That's something that especially with the implications for the high school, it would be very difficult. And so, a fall installation after the school's already in session is something that we would want to avoid. And so we really have to look at timing when we could get the system manufactured, delivered. Once it's delivered, it's really a pretty quick system to install. If we went with that modular system, it's a fairly quick installation. But I guess the long and short of it is possible even with that installation would happen next summer on that. And if that were the case, we would paint sharrows rather than thermoplastic sharrows. In all likelihood, would be the recommendation that we would just have sharrows go down 3rd Street and just establish that as a sharrowed corridor with the paint rather than thermoplastic that could then more easily be removed when the installation of separated bike lanes happened. So that's kind of what we're playing with there is those influences.
This section from Washington up past the high school where there would be parking outside between the lane of traffic and the bike lane, that would seem like that would minimize the cost. I mean, you wouldn't have to have the rail system there because you would have cars parked there. typically?
No, we still maintain the consistent separation. We wouldn't rely on the vehicle. Part of it is because you want to have that visual barrier so that like a vehicle who's trying to parallel park in there, especially with the proximity to the high school and maybe parallel parking being kind of new to a lot of the drivers, you wouldn't want somebody infringing on the bike lane as they try to parallel park. And so that, the system would be consistent throughout the corridor, obviously with gaps at intersections and alleys and those sorts of things.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that, given the nature of the corridor, the schools along the way, the traffic, things like that, the people who are apt to be using it, I think our goal back when was to provide a separated bike lane. And using the accumulated funds to provide that separated bike lane makes sense because after the bridge goes in, and even if it metamorphoses into a multimodal bridge, we're still going to need that same facility. So whether you're taking the money now and putting in the separated bike lanes or putting it as part of a project likely more expensive off into the future, I think to me it makes more sense to do it now and get people used to using it and establishing that as a bike corridor.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, what do you
Same.
think, Ed?
I agree. Yeah, I was going to ask, I remember there was some discussion about not having the separated bike lanes beyond Blaine at one point, and I know we had decided that we did want them, but understanding that there's probably some economy of scale, do you think that would make a difference, significant difference, or no?
Well, when you look at the cost projections, the cost of the separation, the separating whatever facility we decide to go with whatever mechanism of separation, it's about half of the project. And so that small stretch wouldn't really make that big a difference at this point, no. I mean, it wouldn't be terribly significant. It'd be a little bit cheaper, but a lot of the benefit from the bike lane really comes in having a completed corridor. Completed corridors are really important for this type of thing. And so if you have gaps, then those become real psychological barriers for people. And so I don't think we'd likely recommend having a gap in the facility.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, a concern of ours as well is that this is the first separated bike corridor we'll have in the city, so we really want
Wanna
to
do
do
it
the
right.
best we can.
Yeah, I remember the discussion centering around leaving it maybe from Hayes or Blaine as a Sharrow area was to preserve the parking there if there wasn't going to be additional automobile traffic there. But what you say, I think, is true. If it's a continuous thing that comes straight off the bridge and you're separated entirely all the way, I think it would be a better sell for people using for ridership and to increase ridership.
Well, with our Hawk system now installed crossing Mountain View and the connection to the trail system there, it becomes a pretty nice connection. And then just circling back then to the question of the termination point, as Gary indicated, the Transportation Commission submitted a letter to the City Council. The original council adopted plan was to have the separated bike lane continue to Washington Street, cross Washington Street, and then turn north to 2nd Street on the state highway system. We've submitted that plan to the Idaho Department of Transportation. They are not terribly keen on that plan as we submitted it. They felt that if that was what the city desired, that it should include, that we should just remove the parking along that block. And so rather than taking the turn lane, because ultimately what ended up happening is the turn lane was the place where the separated bike lane ended up going. And so parking was maintained and the turn lane was eliminated up to 2nd Street. They preferred just to see the parking go in its entirety if that was the city's preference. So with that, So the secondary option in the original plan that was generated was for the bike lane then to terminate, if that didn't work at Washington, was for the bike lane to terminate at Jefferson Street. And so it would terminate right out here at Jefferson with basically 2 legs then going off in bike lanes, one to 5th Street where people could cross Washington at 5th, or up to 2nd Street to our Greenway system where people could cross at 2nd Street. As Transportation Commission took a new look at this in light of ITD's response, they felt that the continual corridor to Washington Street was very important. And so they generated a recommendation that regardless of ITD's response, the Transportation Commission's recommendation was to terminate the separated bike lanes at Washington Street. And so
Yeah, there are a couple of factors here. Number one, ITD has not said no yet. They have avoided the question, if you will, or at least have not given us a definitive answer. So we're continuing to discuss it with them. I agree with Tyler. I have my doubts whether we're going to get the answer that we hope. But the other issue is that in discussions with Les McDonald, who was very, very instrumental in shepherding this process along, I've talked to him just a couple of weeks ago. He got a copy of the letter from Transportation Commission. He has some very real concerns about just terminating the bike lane at Washington and Third. And I know Tyler and staff brought that up to the Transportation Commission as well. And we're not here to argue whether it should or it shouldn't. Transportation's recommendation is Transportation's recommendation. What we would like to do is we hired Alta Engineering to help us develop the corridor concept. When council wanted additional information, got kicked back to Alta, they would give an answer, and then the council formulated its plan. What staff would like to do is to retain Alta to take a look at Transportation's recommendation and analyze it as well. You remember when termination of the bike lane or continuation of the separated bike lane to Washington, and then going up Second Street or Washington to Second, and then crossing over into Main. Alta had given a bunch of recommendations regarding that, considerations that council should at least consider before it made its decision. We believe that, and Les has a very big concern that if you have bicyclists who are not comfortable in crossing a major arterial street, Highway 95 North, then, and one of the most problematic intersections in town, Third and Washington, that may create confusion and perhaps an unsafe situation. Again, not arguing against it. What he's saying is, can we do a little more analysis on it so that council has the full story? And just wanted, that's the recommendation at this point. Not to disregard anything Transportation has done, as much as we would like to take it back to Alta, have them consider that recommendation, give us a pros and cons, and then council can make its decision based upon that.
You know, Alta really is a really good resource. We're lucky to have them in the Northwest. That worldwide, they do a lot of multimodal planning, and they were the group that did the multimodal section of our transportation plan. I currently have engineering getting us an estimate for that work, what they would charge. We don't anticipate a huge amount since this is a corridor study that they've already conducted, and so it would just be a matter of presenting them with the options for termination and saying, hey, what do you guys see, and getting just kind of a third-party look at it.
And if it turns out that the recommendation is, we think the recommendation's fine, then we'll bring it to council with that. If, however, the recommendation is, well, you really need to consider this, then we could take it back to Transportation Commission, at least show them what Alta's conclusions were and determine whether they wanted to amend their letter or not.
Well, without knowing the cost estimate for that, I guess it's a little concerning to me that idea didn't seem to originate out of the Transportation Commission. Am I wrong about that?
The idea of just terminating regardless of.
No, the idea of
the-
working with Alta, excuse me. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I guess I'm not
Was
Yeah.
understanding
it
the question
recommended
there.
to Transportation Commission that Alta be retained to consider the recommendation?
Oh, no, that recommendation did not come
Mr.
from the
Kite, would
Transportation
you
Commission, but yeah.
Approach the bench, if you would, and
Please to approach the bench for the boss. So first I should say that Tyler and his staff have been terrific to work with in the last few months in terms of looking at how to really end this in a good way at Washington Street. We would be more than happy to get Alta's review of this. They did a great job when they looked at the whole Third Street separated bike lane all the way. They had a lot of really good suggestions. And I think getting just another pair of eyes of people who do this all the time would be just a big help to make everybody feel comfortable about what this final design looks like, so.
no, thank you for your input. That's helpful.
And in the meantime, I continue to have conversations with ITD as well, so we'll continue to seek some sort of conclusion to our request at the same time.
Personally, I don't see that as the the Washington II piece as a deal breaker either way. I mean, it doesn't, there's as many people that have reservations about that as are interested in it. So certainly hearing Alta's take on the situation, I'm interested in that as long as it's not cost prohibitive.
Yeah, we don't think it will, and I should have some numbers shortly on that.
By the way, we would also use that same funding mechanism, the accumulation for the Third Street multimodal bridge as for funding of the continued study as well.
So for the purposes of making some kind of recommendation to council, are you asking today that we forward this on with or without a recommendation?
No, actually, if it's the consensus of this committee that you would like us, number one, to put together a more formalized request for the separated bike lanes, we will bring that back to you, hopefully at the next council or committee meeting, and then it can go to council the first meeting in June. And as far as retaining Alta, the recommendation of this committee, we will just retain Alta rather than taking it up. Seems to delay the process quite a bit for something that the council likely, if you're in consensus, likely would want more information anyway.
And those small type projects, those kind of just doing business projects or contracts are things that we do pretty routinely.
Sure.
So
Yes to both?
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
we will proceed in preparing things for you to
We'll
look
get
at.
it together.
Thank
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you, Tyler, for
We'll
those
see y'all on
reports.
Thursday.
Okay.
Bright and early.
Okay, that's everything on our agenda for today, so entertain a motion to adjourn.
Let's go.
All right. Thank you, everybody.